Hello, I am late today because I have been on a wonderful general data protection workshop. These new GDPR rules that are coming in. How exciting is that? So here I am, rather late, and I'm thinking about, are we really grown-ups? My children, a couple of them came back from university this Christmas and opened the fridge and said, "Wow, your fridge is so full." And do you remember when you first left home and you had that experience of what it was like to look after yourself for the first time? I remember that, and I remember how I suddenly realised how much my mother had been doing for me. You know, I didn't have to think about my meals or my washing or going out shopping. And it's so funny to see my children having to go through that process of learning to look after themselves. When we're born, obviously, we're very, very dependent on our parents, and we learn that if we cry, we will be rewarded with food or a clean nappy or warmth. And we learn that we can be cared for. And growing up really is a sort of reverse process, isn't it? Because we begin to learn that we need to care for ourselves, and perhaps we might turn to caring to others, for others as well. But do we really learn that lesson? This is the question that I'm considering in my blog this week. Are we really grown-ups, or do we still carry on expecting other people to meet our needs? And if we are expecting other people to look after us, sometimes we can get involved in what's called the drama triangle. And this is where we can feel fairly helpless, and we're looking for people to look out for us and to rescue us from our situations. And the drama triangle has 3 points to it. There's a role called the victim, there's a role of something called the persecutor, and there's also another role which is the rescuer. And these can either be people or they can be circumstances. So for example, if we see ourselves as a victim, we can have persecuting circumstances, or we could see someone else as a persecutor. And often in interpersonal relationships, we begin to see somebody else as a persecutor. We feel that they're bullying us or pushing us around. And when that happens, we're often putting ourselves into a victim position, and we're blaming the persecutor for our situation, rather than taking control and actually seeing what we can do about that situation. And if we're feeling victimised, quite often what we do is we begin to look to somebody else to rescue us, and we think that someone should do something about it. Or sometimes, if there isn't really anything that can be done about it, we turn to rescuing behaviour. We try and dull our pain. We try and escape from whatever's going on, perhaps by working too hard or overeating or dulling the pain with alcohol. There can be all sorts of ways that we can engage in rescuing behaviour when we find it very difficult to face up to a particular circumstance in our life or something difficult that's going on. And the other thing about the drama triangle is we can actually move around the drama triangle, because wherever you are on the drama triangle, you're actually a victim. And what can happen is, if we're not taking responsibility for our own feelings, we can often become a bit of a rescuer. So in order to feel good about ourselves, we can try and help other people. And that's a sort of classic rescuing position. And we think we're ignoring our own needs because we're helping everybody else. But in some ways, we're getting our needs met vicariously through other people. And we can become quite frustrated when people actually spurn our desire to help them. And this is something that the victim will often do, is when we try and help them, they can say, well, yes, I could do that, but... And what it is the victim actually, in a sense, doesn't really want to be rescued. They're quite happy being helpless. And you can make suggestions to them for them to help themselves, but they'll often come out with this phrase, well, yes, I could do that, but... There's always a reason why they can't take action. And that's a classic victim position. And if you're a rescuer and you're trying to help someone, that can lead to you feeling quite frustrated. And at that point, you might turn into a bit of a persecutor. And it's very interesting to look at this dynamic and see how it plays out in your life. How does it play out in your relationships? How does it play out in your relationships with your family, with your children, with your spouse? Are you being a persecutor? Are you being a victim? And whenever we are in that place, it's because we're not taking responsibility for our own feelings. We're not taking responsibility for our situation. And that's what really being grown up is all about. It's about taking responsibility for ourselves. And yes, sometimes it's not possible to change a situation, but we can change the way we respond to it. And we can think about how we want to respond to that particular situation. And obviously in life there are real victims, and I'm not seeking to denigrate when things happen to people. But even in that situation, survivors can choose the way that they will respond to that particular situation. You can not respond in a particular way if you choose not to, and you can choose how you will work at responding to that situation. And that can actually feel about the only power that you can exercise, but it can feel very powerful to think, I'm going to choose to respond to this in a particular way. And that gives you a sense of control when sometimes there isn't any control. So that's my thought for today, and I'm going to be publishing my blog shortly on this. And if you'd like to read it, it's at thegoodenoughmum.com/blog. And I'd be very happy if you want to visit and sign up for my blog. And I will be following the GDPR regulations on that. So your data will be protected. Anyway, it's nice to see you. Thanks for joining me. And I'll see you again next week. Bye.